Welcome everybody to NobleCon 2022. It's great to be back in person. It's been a few years. Avino is in its 54th year of being in business, 37 years of production, and we just completed a major acquisition, so I'm going to roll out our 5-year plan to grow the value of our company by 10 times. So we have a plan, and please bear with me. There's quite a few slides, so I'm going to try and get through this as quickly as possible. This is a disclaimer that I'll be making some forward-looking statements. So Avino is a primary silver producer. Our main asset is in Durango, Mexico, in the heart of Mexico. It was the very first mine discovered there in 1558. Captain Iber of Cortez's army claimed to have found a mountain of silver, and they formed the city of Durango to mine it. So the beauty of that is infrastructure. We've got 10,000 people that live on either side of the mine, so we have 100% Mexican labor force right up to our chief operating officer. Here are some of our key assets. So what we were doing over the last year is a digital transformation corporate-wide. We've put in all kinds of receivers in the mill and underground, so everything communicates digitally. We acquired La Preciosa. This is a 150 million ounce deposit right beside our infrastructure. So combined, we have close to 300 million ounces of silver equivalent, and a 5-year plan, which I'll get into next. Large resource base, 60 million tons. So our mill is capable of 2,500 tons per day, or 1 million tons a year. So that's 60 years of mine life. So we're not planning to wait 60 years to mine it. We're going to do an expansion in the next 5 years. 290 million ounces of silver equivalent. Probably 60 to 70% of that is pure silver, and there's gold and copper in the mines as well. But if you generate over 60% of your revenue, you're considered a pure silver play. Large land district scale holdings. By this acquisition, we've increased our land holdings by 7 times, and so there's excellent opportunity for additional discoveries. So here's our 5-year plan. So this year we've restarted the mine back in August. It was down while we were doing some infrastructure upgrades, building a new dry stack tailings. This is state-of-the-art tailings storage, and also drilling our tailings storage facility number 1. There's a large endowment of precious metals sitting at the bottom of the tailings, and that was from when we mined in the 70s and 80s, and they had poor recovery rates. So we couldn't drill it while it was an active tailings dam, so we just announced 110 drill holes, 0.5 gram of gold, which is very good. And there's other companies in Mexico reprocessing tailings, so that's part of our growth strategy. But this year we're going to be processing between 1,500 and 2,000 tons per day, producing between 2.2 and 2.6 million ounces this year. By the end of the year, we'll be up to 2,500 tons per day. And next year we'll be producing 3.2 to 3.5 million ounces of silver equivalent. Our costs right now are $17 all in sustaining. So at 25 silver, we're generating free cash flow right now. And we recently put out our Q4 numbers. We generated $2.5 million in free cash flow in Q4. In 2024, we're going to be adding more high grade from the acquisition because the mine will be in place by then, the expansion. So you'll see the growth to 3.5 to 4 million ounces of silver equivalent. In 2025, we're going to bring that oxide tailings project into production, so that will be a heap leach mine, reprocessing the old tailings, and so that will be built in 2025, and that will add 1,400 or 1,500 tons per day in 2026, so we get up to 3,900 tons per day, and we'll be producing 4.5 to 5.5 million ounces of silver equivalent on an annual basis. And then we're looking at a 1,500 ton per day expansion in the mill. So we'll then be up to 5,400 tons per day and producing between 7.5 to 9 million ounces of silver equivalent. And just so you understand what the value of the companies that produce that, they're considered intermediate. Endeavour Silver would be one. They produce 8 million ounces annually last year, and they have $1 billion market cap. Our market cap's 100 million. So that's the 10 times growth that I talked about at the beginning. And that's based on current parameters. If metal prices go higher, obviously our value will go higher. So the project is located in the heart of Mexico in the state of Durango. It's probably the first or second largest producing state in Mexico. So the access to skilled labor is excellent. Infrastructure surrounding the mine. So there's a network of roads surrounding the mine, and so that's excellent because we don't have to build any infrastructure to bring in people. They can literally walk to work. And also it's a security feature. We're out in the middle of rolling farmland. We're not in the middle of nowhere in a remote area where you could get in trouble with the bad guys. So we've never had any problems. We don't have any problems with our labor. It's 100% Mexican labor force, right up to our chief operating officer, who's a graduate of Colorado School of Mines. So first class operator down there. And another key thing to remember is we have a 20-kilometer dedicated power line right to the mine, capable of 5 megawatts, and we're only utilizing 3. So we have the capacity to grow from electrical purposes. And the dry stack tailings that we're building is expandable, and we'll be reclaiming the water. So that's a good feature. So our revenue in Q4 was 9.3 million. So we expect to generate between 35 and 40 million this year. We're hoping to have about 5 to 10 cents in earnings per share. Q4 production numbers, so copper was up 68%, silver was up 139%, gold was up 92%, and silver equivalent was up 101%. And all-in sustaining, last year at $73, that wasn't a full year, that was just some leftover material that we sold before we reopened the mine, so that's why the cost was higher. But our all-in sustaining now is $17.14, so we're normalizing now since we reopened the mine. And Q1 production numbers came out, the earnings are out in about 6 weeks, but Q1 was down a little bit just because Q4 was in a high-grade gold area, so we produced more material in Q4. But we expect to be in more high-grade in the second half of this year. And so here you can see in 2020 and 2021, we were affected by the shutdown of COVID and then the infrastructure upgrades. So this year we're back on track and ramping up, 2.2 to 2.6 million ounces expected to be produced this year. 2022 outlook, so 600,000 tons are going to be run through the mill. Capital expenditure, 7 to 9 million. We're debt free right now. We produce a concentrate, which is another security feature. We don't produce silver bars on site, so we're not a target from the cartels. We truck our material to Manzanillo, where it goes on a freighter, and we sell it to Samsung. They buy 95% of our material, and it goes into their electronics. They wanted to source their raw materials from us as a test for their business. They don't want to rely on buying in open markets, so they thought we were an ethical company because it's been a family-run business. My father founded the company in 1968, and so I've been running it for about 15 years now, and they like the fact that it's been successful. And so we've got 15,000 meters of drilling happening right now, 3 drills turning, so we're doing exploration and development at the same time. So expect new drill results coming out in the next few quarters. The dry stack will be ready in H2, and what that does is it compresses the moisture out. So when we build a tailings pond, there's no possible movement or collapse because there's no moisture in it. Metallurgical test work this year on the oxide tailings, so the 110 holes I mentioned earlier, that's all going to be metallurgically tested so we can have a higher degree of confidence. And next year we're doing a pre-feasibility study on that project. So we're excited about that. Underground communications, conveyor systems, and new underground equipment is part of our expenditures. And since we acquired the La Preciosa from Coeur, we retained the services of some of their ex-employees that are well known in the area. One lawyer is our ESG manager, so he's going around to the local communities, meeting with the Ejido groups. These are the local villagers that form coalitions, and you have to get their blessing to operate in their jurisdiction, even though we own the mineral rights. So that's ongoing right now. So we expect to have that done for La Preciosa expansion by the end of this year, and then we'll start building that mine next year. So upside, so we're situated on a volcanic caldera. It's a unique geological feature. It's a window where these solutions came up over millions of years, and they're structurally controlled by faults. And when the faults move in opposite directions, it opens cracks and faults and features where solutions can come up and find the least resistance to the surface. So this is a very unique feature. We have veins on our property that are millions of years apart on the same property, which is very unique. So here you can see a cartoon drawing in the circle. You see the arrows going in opposite directions. Those are the faults, the offsetting faults. So in between, it's all cracked, and all the solutions came up, and you can see names of veins. Little mines that have been there for hundreds of years, and no drilling has been done beneath them. So we're thrilled that we're now focused on our exploration program, and you'll see results coming out in the next few quarters. As I mentioned, there's 20 named veins, 50 additional veins, so a lot of potential there. Here's some recent results. So 3 meters of almost 700 grams silver. This is really exciting stuff. La Potosina could be one of our high-grade contributors to the mill in the next couple of years. So that will really bring our costs down. When we were mining the San Gonzalo mine that ended in 2019, our all-in sustaining was $10. So can you imagine at $25 an ounce the kind of profits we'll be generating once we start mining these areas. Brecha de Bajo, 32 meters of 151 grams. That's huge intercept. So a lot of tonnage in other areas. La Malentia vein. So La Malentia is the name of Cortez's wife. So this vein got named when he was alive. Hi? Meliche. So she was alive when when it was named, which is just amazing. And then so 110 holes on the oxide tailings. Here you can see a diagram. So what we've learned is there's 3 zones. So the lower area is the highest grade. That was the poorest recoveries from the open pit. The middle zone was near the bottom of the open pit. All of that is oxidized material and leaches. So that's part of our PFS next year, and then we're going to build that out. It'll add 1.5 million ounces of silver equivalent production to our bottom line in probably year 2025 at $7 an ounce all in sustaining, because you're not mining it, you're just reprocessing it. Here's the dry stack tailings. So you can see the facility is almost complete. The equipment is on site. It came in from Italy. Believe it or not, it was invented by the olive oil industry for pressing and making olive oil. So now we use it in the mining industry to get the water out so it's safe to store on site. There's a time-lapse video on our website if you want to see that. It's about 5 or 6 minutes long. You can see us constructing that. And then recently closing the acquisition of La Preciosa. Coeur paid $350 million to acquire Orco in 2013, and we just paid them $30 million in upfront consideration. So 10 cents on the dollar to acquire 150 million ounces of silver. So we have just over 100 million shares out, so it's 3 ounces per share in value, locked in the safest place in the world, Mother Earth. So, and here you can see the upfront consideration, 14 million shares we gave to Coeur. Closing price was 92 cents on the New York Stock Exchange. So 12.5 million in consideration. a half the warrant, which is worth 1.8 million, 15 million cash, and then the 29.7 million is what I've talked about as the upfront consideration. And then 5 million contingent payment in 12 months. And then there's a contingent payment of 8.8 million 12 months after we start initial production at La Preciosa. So we control the timing on that, and half of that can be paid in stock if we want. And then some insurance Coeur wanted, and they wanted a bottom line number so they didn't look so bad because they paid 350 million. So any new mineral reserves that we find outside of the 300 million ounces, will owe them 25 cents per ounce up to 50 million for a reserve, which is the highest degree of confidence. And we don't even operate with reserves. We have measured and indicated. It's good enough. You go to reserves if you need bank financing, and we don't. We've already got all the infrastructure. So they'll keep 1.25% NSR on the Gloria vein. That's what we're going after first, and 2% on gross value royalty on everything else. So long as they own 10% of Avino, they can nominate a board member. They declined. They elected a board observer that doesn't have any power, but he gets to watch what we do. And so long as they own 5%, they've entered a voting agreement to vote in favor of current management. So the synergies are that they're located right beside each other, and so we're not competing for labor or infrastructure. So it just makes total sense from both sides. Better keep moving along here. Here's the combined mineral resources. So this is National Instrument 43101 compliant. This is Canadian reporting standards, the highest in the world. So this level of confidence is very good. And you can see the top table is Avino, the middle is La Preciosa, and the bottom is combined. So the metal content, the AG, is pure silver, 151 million ounces of pure silver, 38 million inferred, and then you go to the end of the table, 230 million of measured and indicated, and 61 million inferred. So that's where you get to the 290 million ounces of total resources. And where do we stack up with our peer group? So you can see here on the enterprise value over resource, at the top part are junior producers, the middle are intermediate producers, where we plan to compete in the next 5 years. And you can see they're trading 10 times our value. And one of the reasons why we're so cheap is the mine was down for a year and a half. We only just reopened it in August. So we just got our first quarter, our Q4 earnings out. First quarter of production, and so I think the market wants to see several quarters to normalize, and I think the value of our company will grow now. Here you can see proven producer, large resource base, so measured and indicated silver. The gray companies are producers, so we have the largest endowment of metal of any junior producer. And here you can see enterprise value over measured and indicated pure silver valuation. We're the cheapest. And so that's simply, again, the mine was down for a year and a half. We just reopened it. So tremendous opportunity to get in before we start to get more traction in the market. Research coverage, H.C. Wainwright, Alliance Global, Cantor Fitzgerald, Roth, Noble, newsletter writers. So I encourage you to go to our website, get their contact information, and you can request their reports. Current targets are between $1.50 and $2 US. And we're currently trading around 90 cents. Market cap is about 112 million US. Big swing from 70 cents to $1.40. In February 1st, 2021, when the Reddit Army had the silver squeeze, we traded 129 million shares that day on New York, and we only have 90 million shares outstanding. The stock tripled, and we were opportunistic and raised $17 million at twice our price, and that was the money used to acquire La Preciosa. So we're thrilled about that. You can see the volume averages 1 million shares a day on New York. About 100,000 shares a day on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Coeur is the largest shareholder. Management is second. I'm been building my position for years, and so I'm the second largest shareholder. 116 million shares outstanding, 133 fully diluted. Why invest? Primary silver play. So we have the leverage to silver, 290 million ounces. So if you believe metal prices are going higher, which with the electrification of the world and the EV movement, there's going to be higher demand for precious metals. Silver is used in computers, and it's the best conductor of electricity, so it's used in EV cars. So we're expecting a re-rating this year as we roll out our plans. The 5-year plan is just being put together over the last few weeks since we made the acquisition, so the world doesn't really know about our plan yet. So we're excited to get out here and tell the story. So we're undervalued on a price to net asset value and enterprise per ounce compared to our peers, and simply because the mine was down. And so a lot of potential for growth. Strong balance sheet, no debt, 54 years in the business, high leverage to silver, and 5-year goal to achieve intermediate status. So I think I got it in time. 5 minutes left. We'll open it up to questions.
How do you find those mines?
Well, the conquistadors found them 500 years ago, but the ones that are not obvious, we do soil sampling, we do IP geophysics, where we put electrodes on the ground and shoot electricity in the ground, and you look for conductors of electricity. Aeromagnetometer surveys. We've done a lot of pure grassroots exploration techniques that are modern to look for areas that are not obvious, because if there's overburden there, how do you know if there's a vein below it? So if you sample these soil samples on surface in parts per billion, if you get traces of metal, you know something's around there. So then you trench it and you drill it. We own 3 drill rigs. We're able to drill at 60% of contract rates. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Page 25 under dilution, can you discuss options, warrants, RSUs? Is that tied to the recent acquisition?
Yeah, there's 7 million warrants that Coeur owns, 25% above the 10-day volume-weighted average on closing. So I think it's $1.25 or something close to that. 18 months. So if they pay us that money, I mean, it helps pay for the acquisition. And also that there's a gift on the site of 50,000 tons of broken ore. So when they're before Coeur was there was a company, private conglomerate in Mexico that owned it, Lewisman. So they spun out all their mining assets in the late 80s, early 90s. Wheaton Precious Metals was it was created by them, and a few other ones, Pan American Silver, a lot of them got their assets from Lewisman. So there's 50,000 tons sitting on the surface, valued at about $6 million. So that's going to pay for putting the mine in. And it's ready to go, and we're negotiating with the Hitos right now to start trucking it to the mill. Yeah, Mark. Well, being there for how many decades? 54 years, and we have 100% Mexican labor force, so there's no bad blood down there, and we've got really good accountants, so we get that VAT back on a regular basis. Yeah, AMLO has said no new mine permits, so that's another reason why Coeur wanted to sell it. But for us, it's just putting a portal in. It's part of our operation. There's no problem getting a permit. It's now more the social aspects. Because of the left-wing government, you got to go and discuss and negotiate with the Hito groups. And we have a good reputation there because there's no expats down there. It's all Mexicans negotiating with Mexicans. And that's what differs us from everyone else. Our oldest employee, Mercedes, who's been with us since 1970, her late husband was a senator and became a speechwriter for Felipe Calderon, one of the presidents. And they got appointed the Mexican representatives to the Vatican. This was about 10 years ago. She calls me up crying and she goes, I have to quit. I'm like, what? She goes, I'm going to Italy to live in the Vatican. So I went to visit her there with my kids. And don't ever go to Rome in August. It was so hot. Oh, man. She goes, what do you want to see? I said, let's go somewhere air-conditioned. So we go in the Vatican Museum, 1 minute. We go right up to the Sistine Chapel. She's explaining Michelangelo, the angels in the clouds. He was contemplating mortality. Some were going to heaven, some were going to hell. I look up and the fingers are touching. I go, what does that mean? She goes, that's the beginning of mankind. I said, Mercedes, we got connections to the highest levels all the way to God because of you. And then they shushed me. So our connections are solid right up to the highest levels in Mexico because we've been there so long. Grade. We're going to be into higher grade material. Thank you. That ends the presentation. I'll be available outside after.